So today we're talking about building your personal brand. And I think, anyone who works in design and marketing, has a fairly good idea of what a brand is. If you start talking to people about brand, quite often within our industry, they'll immediately think of branding and logo. But of course, it is far more than that. It's really about not just a visual representation of the business, but also, the feelings that brand might evoke. So it should really encompass everything from what the brand does to the values it operates from, to what kind of experience it offers as well. So today we're going through a few different points here. I'll be chatting a little bit about the importance of having a personal brand. Vanessa will be looking at things like your elevator pitch and how to promote yourself. And we'll also be taking on some questions from there as well. The challenge I think often that many freelancers have is to think of themselves as a brand when they go into business. And I think that can be a mindset that really helps them to consider how they approach what they do. For instance, if you value creative experimentation and growth as a value, how would you display that? It might be through things like professional development. It might be through some of the content that you might create and place out there online for people to explore. It might be in the language that you use and how you present yourself as well. So having clarity around a personal brand helps determine what values you have around your work, which in turn helps determine what you do, how you do it, why you do it, and who for. It can also help to determine if there is a niche or a specialisation. It can also help to determine the overall consistency of how you present yourself to the wider world. And it can have an impact on how you present yourself to your clients, to peers, to competitors, and to hirers as well. So a little bit of an exercise here. I want you to stop for a moment and to think about what are some of the core key values that you have around your career and what you do. Now, you might come up with 3 or 4 on the spot. There's no right or wrong to this. Simply what we're doing here is exploring this idea and being curious about it. But just stop for a moment, and I'll go quiet to allow you to have a little bit of space here. But I want you to consider, what are perhaps some of the top 3 or 4 values that you have when you think about your career and what you do.
Is there thinking music, Lawrence?
Something like that. I don't know.
I know that one too.
Yeah. As I said, there's no right or wrong with this. It's just a curious exercise here.
And it's something, you can write down the questions and think about it later as well.
Yep. Now consider, how do these values get represented in what you do? How do you know that these values are important to you in your career? And you don't have to answer these questions right now. I'm simply, as you start to think about these values, consider them in relation to these questions and how they might impact what you consider about your personal brand. What are the behaviors that you do around these values? How often do you do them? And how do you know when to do them as well? What is the communication that you do around these values? And if I didn't know who you were, what is it that you do that gives me insight into who you are and what you have to offer? And now I wonder if you can consider your peers as well, perhaps people within the industry that you admire, that you look up to, perhaps people who you put a little bit on a pedestal and aspire to be. Who else is doing the same thing? How are they doing it? Who do you admire in the industry, and what are they doing that have made them so worthy of your admiration? Now, we often use this when we're talking to clients about talking to candidates about their CVs and folios as well. If this was a creative brief to your brand, what would you do to help to ensure that you were clearly offering a flavor of your brand in your sales tools, which is essentially what your CVs and folios are? Does anyone have any thoughts on this or any insights at the moment? Have they had anything to consider from their values in this regards?
I think rather than reinventing the wheel, I think that's a great strategy. See what others are doing, benchmarking, competitor analysis, evaluation, and then, yeah, it sort of like formulates that strategy, or design strategy in whatever you're doing. I think it's a good approach.
Thanks for that, Sophia. Great to see you as well, Sophia. Thanks for joining in.
Yeah, thank you. Awesome.
Anyone else got any ideas there around that? You don't have to right now, just simply seeding these ideas for discussion. Let me put it to you this way. I remember speaking to a creative not long ago who wanted to go out and set up their own business. And he was struggling really to consider how to get in front of people, struggling to really communicate what it was that he does. And I posed this question to him: how do you determine which hairdresser you go to? And the simple fact is this: all hairdressers cut hair. That's what they do. It's a skill that you would expect. Yet most of us, I think, develop a particular relationship with certain hairdressers, don't we? It's almost like when you decide to go to another hairdresser that you almost are breaking up with that hairdresser. And there's almost that, feeling of, oh, how am I going to tell them that I want to go to see someone else? You build that relationship with that hairdresser. So what is it about that hairdresser that has you going consistently to them and not to someone else? And it has to come down to what they bring into that relationship as well. What are their values? Who are they being in that relationship? And that's all part of that personal brand aspect as well. So really, your personal brand is your point of difference. When you're clear about what it is and how you're displaying it, it really stands out. If I look at even at Creative Recruiters, we have a value around being transparent. And in regards to that value, it's often a value I think that is seen as lacking within the recruitment industry at times. And yet it's something that is really important and vital to us to make sure that we are transparent with people, that we are open with people and honest with them, that we sometimes have conversations that might be challenging or hard, but we do it because we're coming from a place of genuine concern, authenticity for those people. And I hope that that's a value that has come across in the communications we might have had with some of you as well. It's certainly a value that drives why we do these sort of virtual catch-ups as well. And so when we start to identify what our values are and bring them to the surface and look at them as to how we present ourselves, how it drives what behavior we do, that can become quite powerful as well. And that's really what we're talking about when it comes to brand. I feel like I'm falling over every single sentence today, so I apologize now, but I'm hoping that you guys get a sense of that. Does anyone have any questions? I might pass it over to Vanessa to talk about the next bit.
No questions are coming up, so.
No, great, okay. I'll handball it to you, Vanessa.
Okay, thank you. So all those questions that Lawrence asked will formulate, the answers to those will actually formulate what I like to call your elevator pitch. And here's a short process on how to actually write your elevator pitch. And most importantly, what is an elevator pitch? Well, it's a clear, brief message about yourself. It communicates who you are, what you're looking for, and how you can benefit a company or an organization. It's typically around 30 seconds, so the time it takes people to ride to the top or to the bottom of a building in an elevator, hence why it's called the elevator pitch. And why is this important? As it goes back to what Lawrence says, it communicates your most important assets. And in a very short amount of time. First, you have to decide exactly what you want to communicate about yourself. So all of those key questions that Lawrence was asking before, all those answers can go into this. So how do we go about writing it? Well, identify your career goal, understand what you do, and work out what your unique selling point is. It's about understanding what will excite to an employer's interest. And you can use bullet points here to get you going, to see what information you need to include. And then you can pull it all together into 2 or 3 sentences. This is actually the hardest part, because you'll write it and rewrite it and write it again. But I think the really good goal about this is that, like, when you first start off and say, what's your elevator pitch, you probably go on for quite a little while, but actually writing these bullet points down, and in actual fact, just writing it down, will make it become clear. So next page, please, Lawrence. So after you've written it all down, read it aloud. Does it actually make sense? I mean, we've all had that before. We write things down, and then when you actually say it, does it make sense? And is it around 30 seconds to 40 seconds? I would say a maximum of 1 minute would be the max. And then this is a good one. Read it to friends and family, because do they actually understand what you do? I mean, I've spoken to friends and family before, and I've asked them, what is it that I do? And they're like, well, yeah, So read it to them, see if it makes sense to them. And then practice. Practice, practice, practice. Also, a good tip for here when practicing is actually to do it on an iPhone, record it, and then play it back. I know it's horrible seeing videos of your own self or listening to your voice, but it will actually help and make sense. And I think most importantly with all of this, have some fun and enjoy the process, because having a solid elevator pitch can make you feel great. It'll appreciate what you do, and you'll get positive reinforcements from others. Is there any questions on these 2 pages? Does anybody have an elevator pitch that they've worked on before?
I was just going to say, I worked in a strategy company where we did this for clients all the time, and I realised I had one without having done it consciously. And I was at it was a Christmas party, and I met somebody who was from the kind of company that I might like to get a job from. Yeah. And it was interesting. He gave his, I gave mine, and that's when I realised I actually had one, and it's a very useful tool to have in the toolkit.
It really is, because as I said when I started off, if you don't have one and you do this for the first time, you'll realise that you just sort of go on and you get lost, and there's no structure, and you're not getting directly to the point. And then after this, with all the steps and to practice it and to run it past friends and family, you really narrow down on it so that when somebody does ask you, as you said, it just comes natural. It's great. So fantastic. Thanks for that input, Jane. I appreciate that. And then if we move on to the next slide, once you actually have your elevator pitch, what do you do with that? And how do you promote yourself? Social and business media. I always call LinkedIn business media. So on Facebook or Vimeo, Instagram, LinkedIn, you can actually write your elevator pitch there, because it should make sense, written and verbal as well. You can use your elevator pitch to introduce yourself to networking. So show up virtually, which you have all done today, where your target audience is. And, look into this. There is so much more networking being done online. Yes, we did have meetups, but they're now all virtual meetups. Look into all of those. And then perhaps when you do join them, they will say, oh, hi, Jane, what's your background and what are you here for today? And you'll go, bang, you've got your 1 minute elevator pitch that's not going to go on, and it's going to make you look professional as well. You should also make yourself known in your networking by posting vlogs and blogs. A lot of you creatives have your own websites. You can actually start writing blogs that are important to your industry and will make your peers look at you and see that you are an active member of that industry. LinkedIn, you can write them super duper easy on LinkedIn. and any relevant pages that you are following as part of your industry. If you haven't already created a website, you could create a website, and there are many, many free ones around. And again, you know, you can show your work, you can talk about who you are, and then there is a section there to actually write blogs. And if that's all new to you, then fantastic. This is a perfect time to actually work that out and see how it's done. Any questions so far on that page? Okay, cool.
I just have another quick comment on that, because I've used mine on a credentials document if I'm quoting, and it helps communicate who you are to your potential client really quickly, and just another one of those things when you're putting all that documentation together.
Yeah, and maybe the one that you write is, you know, slightly different because it is to read or it is a description. But the great thing about that, Jane, is that when you do speak to people and when you are writing, it's all consistent. Your message is consistent about yourself, which we all know in marketing and advertising is a brand has to have a consistent message in whichever area they are communicating in. So that's excellent. Thanks, Jane. And page 2, Lauren. Podcast is also a great way to promote yourself. And again, if you are lucky to be invited on one, then you've got your 1-minute elevator pitch when you're introducing yourself. And also when the podcasts are actually promoting it, then they can actually write down, then we have this special guest, da, 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 da. So, yeah, great. And as I said in another podcast before, you can swap your talents to learn something new and vice versa. If you're wanting to learn something, again, can you offer something else, which will come out in your elevator pitch, what you're actually able to do, what you're qualified to do. And with this, you can also donate your time. So especially to non-profit organisations. And again, using your elevator pitch and what you stand for and what you do, you can easily contact these companies to say what you can offer them and why you can offer it to them because of what you're capable of doing and your qualifications. Claire said, how important is it, especially in today's market, to have your own website? We can talk about that separately, Claire, because it's one of my favourite topics. I think it's super important, and you know, it doesn't have to be pages and pages and pages. It can be 1, 2, or 3 pages, but we can talk about that separately if you like. I can also send you an email on how to set up your portfolio or your own website, including all the different types of websites that are available and are free. So hopefully that helps. So yeah, any questions on ways to promote yourself? No?
It's not so much a question, but it is an observation, being that you know, we're in a situation at the moment where I think people have far more time, and what's really going to help people to stand out is to be people that are creating engaging content that is reflective of your passions and what you're interested in. You know, we were talking last week about accountability and creating spaces where ideas can be bounced off, and even that could be taken to a next level where you might create a podcast or an article or a video where you're perhaps talking about some of the ideas you're working on and asking for feedback to come from that as well, and putting it out to the world and seeing if that resonates and connects with other people too. So there's lots of different ways in which you can get yourself out there and be more present in this social media world at this time. Just a thought.
And also, you know, as I said, you know, writing a blog for the first time is not easy. This is the perfect time to do it because you actually have time to work out how to do it, you know, find out where to get pictures and what topics to actually write about. You've got the time to learn and improve. Usually we never have this much time to do it.
Oh,
Jane?
sorry, Vicky. Just a quick one. I've got a friend who is a writer, and I do a bit of portrait photography, and we did a swap. I wrote my pitch, and she went over it, and because she knew me so well, she wrote things that I wouldn't have written, and also she wrote it with a confidence that I find it's sometimes hard to write about yourself. You know, you can write it about a client or someone else, but you can't. Sometimes you feel a bit strange. You're writing with confidence about your own abilities. So that was a really great swap.
Fantastic. And VA, you put your hand up.
I just worked out how to do it. It's actually a really good tool, isn't it? To Jane's point, I think that what, can often happen when you're writing your own elevator pitch is sometimes you just don't quite nail what you do, and getting somebody else to listen to it that doesn't know who you are, that doesn't know what you do is really invaluable, and getting the right words to nail it is actually the hardest thing. And it changes all the time as you progress in your career, or depending on who you're talking to. And you might end up having 3 or 4 elevator pitches depending on who you're talking to. I had one other point which I've forgotten, so I'll come back to it.
Great. And Claire actually said she'd love to have a chat to me separately. Sorry, Claire. I'm reading these out as they come through. We'll do that separately. Sorry, I'm not. Maybe I need more lessons on Zoom.
I remembered what I was going to say. So as recruiters, every now and again, someone will actually videotape like their 30-second elevator pitch, and they'll actually send it to us with their applications. And I've got to tell you, it's way harder to say no to that person as a recruiter, because we're not scanning. All of a sudden we have this emotional connection, with this person. And so it's not as easy just to go, no, they're not right. You actually, because it's still a little bit unique, we do stop and we watch. And so the very first person that ever did that to me, I placed in a job straight away. And it was the instant connection I had, and that person absolutely nailed the elevator pitch.
Yeah.
I have to agree. Sometimes it can be really hard to get a sense of who the person is when it's just a series of words and images on a page. But then when you see a video of someone in front of you and they're being real and authentic, and you can see their excitement about an opportunity, it's very hard to not get caught up in that and to want to be able to engage with them. So I think that's a really valuable point to what I was trying to say earlier, but tripping over my words in the process. So,
hi, could I just ask a question, please? I think it'd be really useful for people, I'm not sure who's into this, that we did practice with each other if people are keen.
Yeah.
I have different areas of business that I work in. So it's really great to be able to get a bit of clarity around which bit you use and how you actually sound when you use it, because you might think it sounds really great and that other person can go, it was too long, or you're not, whatever. I just think it'd be, and I'm up for swapping if anybody else is.
No, absolutely. And that was the practice with friends and families and peers. So, yeah.
Have you already got the skeleton of one, Lisa, or do you have one that's already done at the moment?
Well, I do. I'm actually not a creative like all you guys are, but I actually create organisations from an administrative point of view. So I work with either SMEs or charities, and we'll do a review of an organisation and put efficiencies and structures and things in place that make organisations either scalable so that they can move forward, or saleable if that's what they're wanting to do.
Yeah. Did you perhaps, if you wanted, would you like to share what your elevator pitch currently is, and perhaps see if there's any feedback people might give here? Are you up for that, or would you rather do it in a more?
Well, I kind of just stumbled over it right then. That was my really stumbling bit right there. But I don't want to take over the meeting, but I'm happy to, if other people are interested, just to have a bit of a practice with people.
And Lisa, how did you come to that? Was it just after having to communicate it so many times, or did you actually follow a structure, or think, oh, wow, I really have to narrow this down? How did you get to it?
I think all of the above, but then I find that you've got to be passionate about what you're saying. Otherwise, it's got to come straight from, from the inside out. Otherwise, it just sounds like you've been picked up a textbook at some point in time. They told you you've got to put one together, so you put it together. I agree with Vicky Ann too about if you have that. Vicky Ann and I had an instant connection when we met, and it's really about, she's very passionate about what she does. I'm very passionate about what I do, and that came across. So that's probably why I stumbled on it, because it's really just about articulating what gets you out of bed. And I know that sounds naff, but that's exactly what it's about.
Can I ask Jane a question? Jane, one of the things that we've really learnt over the last year or so is the power of storytelling when you're in an interview situation. And so we have candidates that have used this during their time with us, and we walk away and we know how powerful it is, because we might not, for example, mention the candidate, remember the candidate's name years later, but we always remember the story. And I'm just wondering whether, in your experience, whether or not we can use storytelling in our elevator pitch so we're remembered.
Okay, that's a question without notice. I can't say why not. Storytelling is the big thing in strategy and branding. At a basic level, the elevator pitch is, you have to have something prepared if you ran into the boss of your dream job. So you need to be able to say, this is who I am, this is what I do. You've only got 3 sentences. But in a longer situation, if you treat this as you would treat a client and say, well, this is the photo I need to have of myself, this is the elevator pitch I need to have of myself, maybe I do 3 different things, so I have to have variations of that, and then I can build a story. I mean, I have even, things like even wearing the same clothes. If you're only seeing somebody a couple of times, whether it's, statement earrings or something that they'll remember, that's sort of a branding point. And then you can build that. And I think if you do have stories, for example, some of the interview questions, like how did you handle a situation? And if you've got a really good one and that you can build into something that shows what you do and how excited you are about it, I think that's great. And so it's almost like lots of little pieces that you have got prepared that you can use flexibly however many you need in the particular situation. That's how I would treat it and how I'd treat it for a client. Hopefully that's...
Thank you.
That's the question.
I appreciate that. No, absolutely you did. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
I just had another quick thought. I did an elevator pitch for a client recently where I was trying to just say very briefly, this is who they are, this is what they do, because they needed a little short thing on Instagram. And the way I rewrote it was to make sure I covered everything off as succinctly as possible. But then at the same time, I've forgotten what the other lady's name was, getting that bit of passion or personality in there. And it doesn't need to be much, because, sometimes you really only have 2 sentences.
No, thank you. I appreciate that.
Do you have a particular way of identifying that passion, or that you're talking about there, Jane? How did you identify that with that particular person?
Oh, with the client?
Yeah.
I suppose I've been working on that project for 3 months. I had gone through branding and strategy with them, so I had got to know them quite well.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was really that thing that you get after you have questioned them over a period of time to be able to do the design, the branding and the customer analysis and all of that. So by the end of that project, having got a brand and built the, in this case, it was a short-term accommodation business.
Yep.
And then because the difference, particularly in that kind of business, is that it's not a hotel, there's got to be a personality to it. So that was, and you could probably argue that with every brand you do, really, you've got to build the point of difference. So you'd already sort of established that, if you like. So by the time we got to that, which was sort of really the summing up of the whole approved story.
It reminds me a bit of, and I know Vicky Ann's a big fan of this book as well, but Michael Gerber's The Emyth, where I can see Vicky Ann laughing there and smiling, where, you know, he talks about the fact that people don't buy a product or a service. They buy a feeling that they get from it. And that's, you know, a really important aspect to consider when you're talking about brand as well. And when people talk about Nike and Just Do It, they've got a slogan and a brand that really manages to provoke a feeling and have people inspired to become part of that tribe, part of that team.
Yeah, I would argue you never buy a product. You aspire to something, or you buy something.
Exactly.
Yeah, everything. Yeah,
Everything's
including
about
designers. Yeah.
Yep, if it provokes a feeling, the feeling is going to be what makes you decide, I want that.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's the same. The question I would ask for many people here is, how do you take that kind of attitude and apply it to what you do? You know, whether it be as a designer or any other role, how do you take that and present something out to the world that made people think, this person loves design, I have to work with them. They make me feel like they're going to do an amazing job.
Yeah.
That's a rhetorical question, by the way, Jane. You're amazing, but I don't expect you to answer that one on the spot. So
I can answer that. I actually know people who've been to a meeting and have come back from the briefing meeting and said, I'm not going to quote this because I have not connected with that person. They said some things that are orange flags, and if I'm feeling this now, how's it going to be once we've started working together?
Yep.
And I also know of people who've said, I've had 2 people for a job who are great, that I can't, what's the difference? But I like that person better, and I think we'll just get along better, and they'll get along better with the studio because they're all on the same wavelength. It's
those small little things that we pick up in our engagement with people that can sometimes be the defining point or the difference. And it's amazing, isn't it, that those little details can make such a difference, but they really do form that, you know, whole thing of what we offer.
And whilst the development of your elevator pitch is a big challenge, and it will start out really long, and your goal is to get it down to the 3 sentences, the most important thing is that you say it again and again and again and again till it sounds so natural and that it comes from the heart, not the head. That's the most important thing, because otherwise it won't sound authentic. And as I think it may have been Jane said earlier, if it sounds like you're just reading, actually it might have been Lisa, if it sounds like you're just reading it off a card, people will forget you. It's finding that rhythm and finding perhaps even an element of humor or something that really portrays your personality. And Jane, I just loved the idea also of wearing something similar, a statement piece, or having, that certain look and feel. I mean, we're in creative. Maybe it's a certain look and feel or a rhythm that we have when we speak, that person just remembers you.
Yeah, a colour.
I think, it's such a, I mean, you know, I always wear black, so it's probably not that great.
It's the Steve Jobs polo neck, really, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, Lawrence. So, I mean, I think that is just such a valuable insight. Thank you so much for that.
It's a bit what Hollywood does.
What's that? Sorry, Sophia?
It's a bit what Hollywood does.
It is, yeah, absolutely.
And I mean, I'm HCD focused, so just to let you know, I mean, my expertise is user experience. So everything you've just been sharing, it just definitely, the storytelling, the identity, well, you get it, giving yourself the elevator pitch, but in mine it would be storytelling to win the trust and confidence. And exactly what you were pointing out then, Vicky, just be your natural self and you bring it, animates with your interviewer. But yeah, human-centered design focus nails the storytelling, empathy mapping, customer journey mapping, etc. Research, it's huge to get to the perfect story. And it's not perfect because it's constantly iterative. Anyway, that's all I wanted to add on. But yeah, you're all aligned. It's all good.
Does anyone else have any more questions or comments or anything they care to share, insights? No, I do need that tumbleweed emoji to go through there.
Would you recommend less being more in this sort of circumstance?
In terms of the elevator pitch itself?
Yeah.
Absolutely. In the sense that, you know, as Vanessa said earlier, it's called an elevator pitch because hopefully it's something you could deliver within the space of an elevator ride. And I think that's sometimes the biggest challenge as well, is how do you manage to distill down the essence of who you are and what you do and what you offer within a couple of sentences. But it's certainly a worthwhile exercise to do. And I think as you start to whittle it down and fine tune it, it becomes a little bit more apparent as to when you're hitting the mark.
Question. I've just got one final question before we finish up, which is very much around the value that you're offering within that elevator pitch. Just going back to what I was saying before about if you're going to use it for a job application, etc., it also needs to perhaps, and I know we've only got 3 sentences, but then there needs to be a value add, something that you're going to bring or something that you're going to give or add value in that place of employment. And, you know, again, we've only got 3 sentences. So yes, it does start to get really complex and it will start to be this long, but you will eventually, I think, be able to get it down to those 2, 3, maybe 4 sentences maximum. But just remembering the value add.
And look, there may be, I don't want to make it more complicated, but there may be sometimes when you actually need 2. If you've got slightly different roles, or if you're talking to different people. One may be to try and get a job, and the other one may be to actually offer your services. So they may have to be slightly different. But as we've all said and we've all commented, it's always changing, and it's always you're always making it better and adapting it all the time.
I've just got one point. Obviously, the elevator pitch is very important. Current environment makes it a bit hard to have those face-to-faces and get yourself seen amongst. I'm getting a bit of fog of requests for things, and how do you sort of get seen in a different world? That's a question I'm sort of racking my brains about at the moment. How do I get out? Got a new idea about something, how to get a business up and running, but without actually physically being there and being able to deliver the pitch. It's a pretty tricky way to start from, you know, a small spot and then let something grow. So any ideas on how to get something to move is appreciated.
You know, as some of those tips said before, you know, you can do that on the different social media and business medias, writing your own blogs, using hashtags is really important as well. And then actually in LinkedIn, you can, if your specific hashtag is graphic designer, for instance, then you would also follow those hashtags on LinkedIn, and then the whole world to graphic designers opens up. So it is a little bit of work that you need to do. also, you know, again, I'm not promoting LinkedIn, but it is such a good area for this. You know, follow other people, follow your peers, follow groups, follow companies that you're interested in, and try and network that way virtually. It is a challenge when everything has to be done virtually.
Yeah, I was sort of thinking back to Lawrence's initial point about identifying your values, and one of the things that I'd written down is old school. And that's, I'm an old school kind of guy. I've always worked face to face and walk up to someone, shake a hand, and off you go, deal's done. So the virtual space is something that's obviously challenging for me. Having to evolve into that world now is, I guess, yeah, my challenge. And
can I just respond to that though, Matt?
Yeah.
Old school is a great value, and there's going to be other people out there who are experiencing the same difficulties that you're expressing right now of being old school in this modern world. And I think that's the story, or part of the story, that you want to be able to share when you're talking about your business. To say, you know, I come from an old school background right now, you know, I'd love to be able to go out there and shake your hand, but in this modern world, we can't. And it's those sort of little moments of authenticity that people will connect with and go, he's old school like me, I like him. Do you get what I mean from that?
Yep.
And yeah, exactly aligned with you, Lawrence. So it's all about the value add, but also what benefits am I going to bring, even being old school? So it's a power tool, definitely. And
VA, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I was just going to say, you know, the power of video is really, really strong. And I think that the more, you know, on all the different platforms, there's opportunities to do live video. And, you know, it could be 30-second thought on, Matt, something that you have done that you really want to share with the creative community. And the more video that you do, the more confident you get. You really don't, in the end, care what you look like all that much. It's just really about what you're saying. And, you know, you'll find a platform, one or two platforms that work really, really well for you. And then you're just literally doing 30-second live interviews, and you'll find that people will start engaging with you that way. And then your personal brand just eventuates. I know within Creative Recruiters, we do video all day, every day. And each of us has our own little niche that just kind of came out of being our natural selves. So I think that if you're a little bit shy using video, don't be shy anymore. This is a great opportunity. Just do it. And literally you can do it on your iPhone and you can post it in seconds. And then all of a sudden you start your own community.
Oh, not at all shy. Not at all shy. I've worked over video for many, many years. I had a team of designers I managed remotely. So that's not a problem. It's more about just reaching new markets, I suppose, reaching new audience and reaching new clients and customers. So I guess it's starting from that point and then getting it to grow as organically, I suppose, is where I'm coming from. But yeah, some good tips. Thank you.
That's exactly it.
Vanessa's tip about groups is a great idea as well. Join as many, you know, groups where you think your client base or your customer base sits. And yeah, post your videos in there as well. Sorry, Lawrence, over to you.
That's it. I was about to say, modern day marketing is not like old school marketing where it used to be, here's an ad, buy my product. And nowadays it's really shifted in this online world to being about building relationships, offering value, engaging conversation, and letting people get to know you. And I think that's what creates a better business model in terms of marketing than the old-fashioned, I'm a graphic designer, use my services kind of thing.
Just got a quick comment. I'm not sure if you're trying to get your head around social media. I'm not sure if that's what the question is. But if that's the case, Instagram and Facebook actually have detailed actually training, if you like, that shows you how it works, how to do it. It's free. So I've heard of people who've built complete businesses straight off of Instagram. So you've got nothing to lose by giving it a go.
That's excellent. Thanks, Jane.
Does anyone else have any other comments or questions before we wrap it up? No? Excellent. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming again this week. We certainly appreciate everyone spending their Wednesday afternoon with us. And yeah, if you have any questions or comments, or if you have any ideas for future topics that you would like to see discussed, please feel free to email us and let us know, as we're more than happy to try to create a virtual space that, you know, discuss topics that are going to be of interest and value to you.
If you go to the next page, Lawrence, there's a couple of email addresses there as well to follow us on. And also, everyone, if you have a look in your messages, there are some email addresses there for people to connect up with each other. So make sure you click on your messages and then grab the emails of people that you want to connect with and have a chat to after this. And then on our last slide, if you've got any questions or thoughts or feedback, always Lawrence and I are always happy to help. And then, you know, we have so many resources on our Creative Recruiters website blog page. There is literally hundreds of blogs there. So any questions that you may have, you'll probably be able to find some of those answers there. And until we meet up again next Wednesday.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank
Stay
you.
well.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks.
Very good.